Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the joint public hearing meeting for September 16, 2024. I call this joint public meeting for the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners in the purpose of conducting a public hearing. First, we need the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Process of the public hearing. Staff will provide general overview of requests. Applicant will provide details of requests. Board of Commissioners will ask questions for clarification. Planning Board will ask questions for clarifications, and the mayor will open the joint public hearing. Public will make comment, and then the mayor will close the public hearing. The rules of public hearing is an opportunity for the public to express thoughts, ideas, concerns, and opinions regarding proposed requests of the Board of Commissioners and Planning Board. The Board of Commissioners, Planning Board, and staff and applicant will not engage in dialogue at this time. If the public has requests pertaining to development, please contact the staff, the applicant, following the public hearing. First item, RZ 2024-1616 Mack Todd Road. Hearing requests for rezoning, residential suburban R2 zoning district of Wake County to zoning R40. Staff.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Commissioners, and the Planning Board. I'm here to present tonight on 1616 Mack Todd Road. This is just a strict rezoning zoning map amendment for a residential property. The following standards are applicable for this zoning, whether the conditions meet the health, safety, and welfare, whether this is an appropriate location for this zoning, whether this rezoning is reasonable and in the public's interest, and then any other relevant factors. The property is 1616 Mack Todd Road. The applicant is Seth Huntsinger. The property owner is also Seth Huntsinger. The property address, 1616 Mack Todd Road. The acreage is 2.78 acres. The current zoning is a Wake County zoning, so an R40 Wake County zoning, and the proposed is for residential suburban. The purpose of this rezoning is in order for them to get City of Raleigh water, they must annex into the town of Zebulon, or at least go through the annexation process. And because they are currently outside of our zoning, outside of our ETJ, they need to go through the process of getting zoning at the same time that they are looking to annex. So you would be seeing this annex, the Board of Commissioners would be seeing this annexation at the October meeting. So public hearing notification was sent out, signs posted, mailed notices to the properties within 750 feet, and then in the paper of general circulation for 2 weeks on the town website. The current zoning for the site, again, it's a Wake County zoning, and so it's an R40, which is a residential zoning district in Wake County. And the applicant is requesting a comparable zoning district in the town of Zebulon, which is the R2 zoning district. The future land use for this site is rural residential, and so that character includes single-family homes. And so this site currently has a single-family home on it, and then that use would be remaining with this rezoning. The standards, again, are whether this project meets the health, safety, and welfare guidelines, whether this is appropriate for its location, whether it's reasonable and within the public's interest, and then any other relevant factors. Also, the property owner is here, the applicant is here, so if you have any questions about why they're filing this application, feel free to call them up to ask those. So staff recommends accepting public comment after the applicant's presentation and referring the matter to the Planning Board for recommendation. So any questions from the Board of Commissioners?
Questions from the Board of Commissioners?
So what is the current distance from the nearest water line to the
Yeah.
property?
So there's a water line that runs along Mack Todd Road.
Okay, that's what I
And so
thought.
it should be right in front of their property. And
Okay.
they've been working with the city of Raleigh to make sure that they're getting all of their ducks in a row on that end to
Okay.
make sure that they can connect to water. So,
Okay.
yeah. So there shouldn't be any sewer or water extension. Well, they're not doing any sewer, but any water extension to the site other than to the site itself. No water lines need to be extended.
Okay, thank you. And they're just asking, they just need this for water, not for sewer?
Yeah, so their well was contaminated.
Gotcha.
And so they're looking to annex in so that they can get water access from City of Raleigh and will no longer have contaminated water.
Thank you.
And I will also say the applicant is unable to stick around for the planning board discussion. And so if the planning board has any questions for them, this is a good time to ask that. Once it's your turn to ask questions.
I don't have any further questions, Mayor.
Commissioner Miles,
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Baxter. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. And none at this time.
Hearing none from the Board of Commissioners. Planning Board. Mr. Roy? George?
Question at this time, thank you.
No questions at the time.
Ms. Snell?
So just to clarify, the applicant is just simply asking for the rezoning and annexation. They're not asking the town to pay to connect them to the water,
No,
just
no.
to be able to do that.
Exactly. Yep.
And surrounding properties also apparently have well issues as well.
Yeah,
Are they
they're-
gonna each come to us individually?
I have not heard from any of the other property owners, so I don't know what solutions they're going through to do that. But this is the only property we've heard from. But I am aware that there are other properties in that area that do have well contamination.
That's all my questions.
No questions at this time.
No questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll now have public comment come to the podium. And is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of the project? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak neither for or against, but just has something to say and would like to say it pertaining to this case? If there is no one who wishes to speak, I will close the public hearing and refer this matter to the planning board for consideration. Thank you. Next item,
Yeah, so.
public hearing RZ 2024-30545 West Barbee Street. Staff.
Sorry about the typo on this slide. 545 West Barbee Street is the correct address. So this is also a strict rezoning, but it's for a portion of a property. So that's something that's a little different on this. And the applicant is also here to answer any questions about this particular project. The standards, I'll go through them again. You're going to be hearing them a lot tonight. In section 2.2.25.j, whether this project meets the standard for health, safety, and welfare, whether it's appropriate for the location in which it's proposed, whether it's reasonable and within the public's interest, and then any other relevant factors. So this property is located at 545 Mack Todd Road, and it's for the top portion of the property outlined in red. The applicant is CSD Engineering. The property owner is Ralph Rojas. The property address is 545 West Barbee Street. The acreage is 0.31 acres. The current zoning of the property is suburban residential R2, and the proposed zoning is heavy industrial HI. Public hearing notifications, public hearing signs were posted, mailed notices to the property owners within 750 feet. It was circulated in the paper of general circulation, posted on the town's website. The current zoning for the site is R2, as previously discussed, but it is right next to a heavy industrial zoning district. And then the future land use for this site shows it as being suburban residential. Suburban residential is a residential future land use type, which is characterized by single-family homes and some single-family attached homes. Again, the standards are laid out in section 2.2.25.j for the standards of whether this meets the health, safety, and welfare, whether it's appropriate for the location in which it's proposed, whether it's reasonable and within the public's interest, and then any other relevant factors. Staff recommends accepting public comment after the applicant's presentation and referring the matter to the planning board for recommendation. And the applicant is here if you would like to recognize him to give a brief presentation and talk a little bit about the project.
Yes, if the applicant wishes.
Good evening, Commissioners, Planning Board. My name is John Oglesby. I'm with CSD Engineering. Our address is 115 East 3rd Street, Wendell, North Carolina. I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property requesting rezoning of a small piece of a large tract. The purpose of this rezoning is to install a public right-of-way for better access to the larger portion of the property. That little 30-foot strip is severely inadequate for access to a 30-acre tract. So we're providing a public right-of-way, and most of the land that we're requesting to be rezoned will be the right-of-way, as well as the 40, 50-foot buffer zones required between industrial and residential. Any questions?
Any questions from the board, commissioners?
So this is for a street to be installed, and when I'm looking at, can you pull up the subject property, please, Kate? Oh, no, go back.
You want?
Yeah.
Do you want just
slide
the aerial
19.
or this
Slide,
one?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So is this to access the portion on this map that is directly to the south, or this is to access the heavy industrial that's
Both.
adjacent to it?
It will allow better access for industrial traffic to that parcel there, which is already a contractor yard. Mm-hmm. And it will also allow future access to the larger tract, which has the R2 over it now, which there's no plans for development at this time, but it will likely fall within the use plan and may become a residential single-family subdivision. But also I'd like to point out the transportation plan shows a connector road coming through the property, which we are already having to dedicate right away on the back side of the HI property, which is owned by Mr. On Time Construction. And this new road has already been designed to have a fair or a good place to tie into any future roads. So any future development by my client on the residential tract would incorporate a good road to tie in to meet the future transportation plan. And also there will be utilities extended and probably likely water and sewer run up that for future access to the larger tract, as well as provide the necessary utilities for the expansion of the HI tract, which is just a shop, an office and a shop. And so they are proposing to annex, or recombine, rezone, build the road so they have better access to their existing site as well as to a future site.
Okay, and so is this the road that is going to be built is going to be initially a private road, but it's going to be built to the town of Zebulon standards for a public road?
We were going to dedicate the right of way now.
Okay.
Not be private, but yes, it's been designed to town of Zebulon standards.
Okay, great.
Sidewalks, curb and gutter, and again, potential utilities running within the right of way as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions for the Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
None.
You back, sir.
Commissioner Clark?
None at this time.
Thank you. Any questions from the planning board?
Not at this time. Nothing at this time, sir.
Sir?
So which parcel is going to be recombined with this subject parcel?
I brought a picture, it's worth more than 1,000 words. Do you mind?
No.
This is the existing property line here, this is the area we're asking. So what will happen is this parcel here, which is the HI, will be recombined here, and then the new access gained for this property here, because this is severely inadequate. So it'll allow access to a new shop and garage, and also good, better access to the existing parcel. And this is the future road coming through there.
Okay, so this is Barbee Street right
Yes,
here.
sir.
Okay. And so this piece is going to be recombined with,
This piece.
gotcha.
But then this access, instead of landlocking this, will provide the full access with the public right of way.
I got you. Okay.
We keep that.
I don't know if anybody wants to, anybody else would like to see this possibly? No further questions.
No questions.
No questions.
At this time, we'll ask anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this issue, come to the podium. Hearing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this issue? Hearing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak neither for or against, just have something to say that's pertaining to this case? Hearing none. If there's no one else to speak, I will close the public hearing and refer this matter to the planning board for consideration. Thank you. Next item. 2024-3, 1800 Shepherd School Road. Staff.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and Planning Board. The applicant has provided a pretty extensive presentation, so I'm going to go through some stuff that I want to highlight for you guys, but the bulk of the presentation is going to be from the applicant. So the following standards, again, we're looking at 2.2.25.j. The standards are whether this meets the health, safety, and welfare, whether it is appropriate for the location in which it's being proposed, whether it's reasonable and within the public's interest, and then any other relevant factors. And then as well, whether it's better than the strict interpretation of the UDO. So the property is located at 1800 Shepherd School Road. The applicant is Longleaf Law Partners. The property owner is Roger Hombearer. The total acreage is 35.4 acres. The current zoning for the site is suburban residential R2, and the proposed zoning is for a planned development. So public hearing notifications were posted along both 1800 Shepherd School Road, and then as well on the road connection through Shepherd's Park. Public hearing signs were posted. Mailed notices were sent to property owners within 750 feet. The notification was sent to the paper of general circulation, and then it was posted on the town's website. The site conditions, so currently it's a agricultural site, not heavily wooded, but there are some trees and grass on the site. The current zoning, as we discussed previously, is an R2 zoning next to the R13 special use district, that is Shepherd's Park. The future land use is suburban residential, which is a residential future land use classification, which is usually classified by single-family homes, both detached and attached. Line of activity. The first review was submitted back in March. Comment letter was sent out to the applicant. These have not been updated, but I will get you the updated TRC meeting. It was probably in May, and then the second review was submitted on 7/8/24, and then the comment letter was sent back 7/30/24, and then we got the final joint public hearing packet submittal on 8/12/24. So concept plan, this is a mix of RV camping sites, tent camping sites, and some yurts. And so the following plan on the right side of the screen shows the different sites, and then the key on the left shows what those different sites are. So it's a combination of RV, yurt camping sites, and then tent camping. Some considerations. So the permitted uses that the applicant is requesting with this plan development is for a campground as well as a recreational vehicle park. The applicant is providing a greenway connection over to the Shepherd's Park neighborhood greenway, as well as a primary trailhead, which you can see marked in this red box over here, which would provide some parking on site to connect over to that greenway. Road connections, the applicant has proposed a continuation of Logan's Creek Drive for the purpose of fire access, and so there would be a gate there with a Knox box that fire could access for fire access, and the applicant has not proposed connection to Logan's Canyon Lane. This is something that in our UDO we do require connection from stub streets to future development, and so that's one way that they are deviating from our Unified Development Ordinance. The buffer of Shepherd's Park, they are proposing a modified type D buffer, which will incorporate some existing tree line. And so what that kind of looks like is this bottom figure right here, which shows some trees that they will be adding in to kind of help enhance the buffer that is existing with the existing trees, or where needed, they'll provide the full type D buffer, which has the full plantings of a type D buffer. Road improvements, the applicant is providing the road improvements to Shepherd School Road, which is a 4-lane median divided road. This includes space for the median, and then the addition of another lane, as well as the construction of curb gutter, planting strip, and sidewalk with trees within that planting strip. Building architecture, the applicant is providing an amenity building on site that will house things such as their check-in, as well as access to their pool and other amenities on site. It's very reminiscent of other amenity sites that we see for residential development in town, and I just wanted to note that as we talk about how it fits into the architecture of the town. The utility allocation policy, with this being a place of accommodation, hotels, motels, other accommodation services, it gets a base points of 40, and they're getting a total of 63 points by providing things such as pollinator garden, native shade trees, construction of private greenway, meeting the town of Zebulon standards, a pool, deck, patios more than 1,000 square feet, meeting space with kitchens less than 15,000 square feet, outdoor kitchen and grills, an IPMA certified playground equipment, drinking fountain with pet fountain, and then permanent tables with shade cover. So the following standards, I'll go over these again. Evaluate these as you are reviewing this project tonight, whether it meets the guidelines for health, safety, and welfare, whether it's appropriate for the location, whether it's reasonable and within the public's interest, any other relevant factors, and then with this being a planned development, that it's better than the strict interpretation of the UDO standards. So staff recommends accepting public comment after the applicant's presentation and referring the matter to the planning board for recommendation. So at this time, Mayor, if you would like to recognize the applicant to give their presentation, that's the next step.
Yes, applicant, proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ashton. I'm an attorney with Longleaf Law Partners. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicants. Thank you. Kate, which is it just? Thank you. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicants, Roger Honberry and his son-in-law, Ryan Rimley. As Kate mentioned, we are seeking a rezoning for 1800 Shepherd School Road. Currently, that is zoned that R2, residential residential 2. And we're looking to go to a planned development district to develop a campground and recreational vehicle park resort. Before I jump into too much detail, I do want to give you a little bit of what we are proposing versus what we're not. Just make it very clear that we are looking to do a family campground and recreational vehicle park resort. It's a vacation resort. It's for families wanting to come and enjoy the beautiful property and camp in the nature and enjoy the beautiful countryside that is out there. It's for church groups and school groups and Boys and Girl Scout troops that want to go camping with their friends. It's even something that travel teams may be able to utilize as they're coming into town, just because you all do not have a hotel or a large lodging option for folks that are trying to come and visit the town of Zebulon. What this is not a mobile home park. There will be no permanent residences on site except for the caretaker's residence, who is in charge of property maintenance for 24 hours a day while guests are on the site. So I just want to make that clear that this is not a mobile home park where people are going to be living permanently except for that caretaker. Anybody that is going to be visiting our campground and recreational vehicle park resort will be following the town of Zebulon's requirements as to lengths of stay, which limits a length of stay to no more than 30 days within a 6-month period. We fully anticipate that most of our guests are going to be coming in for weekend visits. You know, you hop in, hop out, have a nice weekend in the town of Zebulon. And then during the summer months of June and July, that's when we anticipate people coming maybe for week stays, 2-week stays. But again, no living, no permanent residences will be on site except that caretaker residence. Now, I have a lot of slides that give you much more detail, but before we dive into those, I do want to introduce you all to the applicants. We have Roger Honberry and his son-in-law, Ryan Rimley, and they have a love of camping. They're local Wake County residents. They live in Wake Forest, so they are only 30 minutes away from this site, and they fully intend to be involved with this campground and RV park, and so they are not going to be absentee owners. But I do want them to introduce themselves to you and let you know why they fell in love with this property and with the town of Zebulon.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners and Planning Board. My name is Roger Honberry, 6588 Wake Falls Drive in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Just wanted to let you know that back in April this year, I purchased the 35 acres that is the subject of the discussion tonight. And I also purchased from the Tant family at the same time the 30 acres to the north of this site. The two sites are joined at the property line by Beaver Dam Creek. And these properties were, for lack of better words, the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I've been in the property development business for 35 years now, and when I saw these properties, they were such that I wanted to have my own family farm there on that north side of the property. And Garland Tant, who was one of the 3 owners of the properties, attended our neighborhood meeting. And one of the things that he said to me after he saw our slides and understood fully what our intentions were is that his parents and his grandparents would be proud and very pleased with our intentions to basically preserve the property and the natural beauty of the property. For all of my life and Ryan's life, we've had a passion for the outdoors, and I think we feel the importance of creating lasting memories for families and people that would be in the general community of Zebulon. He and I both are registered professional engineers with the state of North Carolina, as well as I'm a registered commercial building contractor with the state of North Carolina. We live, as I said, in close proximity to the site over in Wake Forest. And we're also going to have a caretaker, as Jennifer pointed out, on site. And the reason I emphasize that is because we want to make sure that the property gets developed properly, but we also want to make sure that the property is managed properly after we get through with the development. And to that end, I have a vested interest in making sure that happens, because I'm going to keep that north property in my family. And I want to make sure that it's protected as well as the campground itself. So with that said, I'll turn it over to my partner, Ryan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Rimley. My address is 1412 Kennesaw Street, Wake Forest, North Carolina. As longtime Wake County residents, Roger and I have been looking for a piece of property in the area suitable for a campground to provide a space for families and friends to fellowship together and spend time together enjoying the outdoors. And we feel like this property is a perfect spot for our proposed RV campground due to not only the natural beauty and the topography, but also the two ponds that we have on site that will be a focal point for the campground. As you've already kind of heard, our campground will provide multiple ways to stay and enjoy. Not only will we have RV sites, we'll have glamping sites, which consist of canvas tents and yurts, as well as traditional tent sites. So that basically provides, everybody an opportunity to come enjoy our property, no matter, what their background in camping is, whether they, own a fifth wheel RV or if it's their first time kind of camping and want the comforts of and amenities of a yurt or a canvas tent. So I just thank you guys for your time today and hearing our project, and I just pray that you'll consider approving our rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we'll get into the details of what we're proposing. The property, as Kate mentioned, is 35.4 acres. Current uses on it. There is an existing residential house. It is not occupied at the moment. We do have frontage along Shepherd School Road. Our current zoning is that residential suburban R2. The future land use is suburban residential, and we are proposing that PD district with an incorporated master plan. The really nice thing about the master plan is we are locking ourselves in as to the uses and also to the layout of this site. So if we want to do any substantial changes to one of those two things, we would have to come back in front of the town and ask for another rezoning. And as we said, we are proposing a campground and recreational vehicle park. So existing conditions, as Roger mentioned, we do have these two beautiful existing lakes that are, the one very large one is towards the center of the site. It is a focal point for the property, and then there's a smaller one to the north. We have the Shepherd's Park subdivision to our south and to our east, and we are at the intersection of Shepherd School Road and Old Bun, and then US 64 is to our southeast. Some unique features of this site. We have an existing City of Raleigh sewer line. It's a pretty big sewer line. I think it's a 30-foot sewer easement that runs through the north end of the site. And we also are at the northern end of the property housing the Beaver Dam Creek. This map shows you both the sewer line, which is in green, and then also the floodway, which is in blue, for the creek, and then the pink is the floodway, we call it the floodway fringe, it's the 100-year flood zone. So a good portion of that northern piece is into the 100-year flood zone. The current zoning, as we mentioned, is that R2, and as you can see, we have the R13 next to us with the Shepherd's School, or I'm sorry, the Shepherd's Park subdivision, and then there is heavy commercial also at the intersection of Shepherd School Road and Old Bun. The future land use map has us as that suburban residential, which is a good portion of the property around us, but there is that SC, again, where that heavy commercial use is at the intersection of Shepherd School Road and Old Bun. This is the town's comprehensive transportation plan. I think Kate mentioned earlier that Shepherd School Road currently is a 2-lane roadway. The transportation plan has it eventually becoming a 4-lane divided roadway. And this project is going to be responsible for building out our half of the frontage along our site to make that new extension and widening of Shepherd School Road happen. This next slide is of Zebulon's Greenway Master Plan. Our site is highlighted by the blue star on the screen. And as you can see, there is supposed to be a Greenway Trail extension across the northern portion of our site, and we are going to be providing that as part of this development. It will connect all the way over to Shepherd. It will connect from the Shepherd's Park subdivision Greenway Trail that currently exists all the way to Shepherd School Road. And we're also providing a major trailhead at the Shepherd School Road entrance, which will be available for the public to come and use and park at that trailhead and be able to access the greenway from our project. This next slide is our master plan. It is got a lot of detail on it, so I'm going to break it down in the slides after this. But this will give you a good overview of the site. It has a breakdown, and I think Kate had a similar slide of all of the different types of campsites that will be available here. We have RV sites, there's about 50 of those, and then the other 35 campsites that are available on site are a combination of yurts, glamping sites, and then also what we call platform tent sites, which is a platform you can bring your own tent. It is a wide variety, as Ryan said, for folks, maybe people more like me who want the more glamping experience versus other people that are completely fine just sleeping in a tent. But it gives that full array of options for folks that want to come and enjoy the property. Just to give you some photos here of what we're talking about when we're talking about yurts and glamping tents versus those platform tent sites. We have the yurts up in the left-hand corner of the screen. We have the glamping tent sites on the right-hand upper portion of the screen. Those are those canvas tent sites. And then the picture at the very bottom is what we would consider one of those just platform tent sites where you would bring your own tent. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, just to know our master plan does contain all of the dimensions for the different types of campsites. I do want to point out, sorry, is it this one? Yes, we do have ADA accessible RV campsites as well for folks that need that accessibility. So we thought that was very, very important as a place of public accommodation, and make sure that we're meeting all those ADA requirements. So there are going to be ADA accessible campsites. And then even in the tent sites, you'll see that the picnic tables are ADA accessible as well. Now this is a color rendering of the master plan, and I think it's a little easier to see the detail of what we're proposing here than some of the site plan drawings. But one thing I really want to point out to everyone is just how green this site is. It is not common to see this much green space left over when you have a development. And that goes to Roger and Ryan's vision for this site, really working towards an environmentally conscious and sustainable project, making sure that they're preserving the ponds and the trees and the hilly landscape. That site has got a good amount of granite on it, and they are trying their best to save as much of that as possible. There is a ton of open space that's going to be left over post-development, and one really, really cool thing about this site is the post-development impervious area is only going to be 23%. That is incredibly low for a post-development site. Usually this site, if it were to develop out as a single-family community, you could have up to 70 single-family homes on this site. The town of Zebulon's UDO right now, I think, says lot coverage can be anywhere from 30 to 35% per lot. And that, I don't believe, covers or includes roadways. So you add all the roadways in after that. So keeping this at 23%, that is a significant reduction in impervious area, that asphalt, that concrete that can be on site, than what you would get under current zoning. This is just zooming in for you all to give you a little closer view of the northern half of the site. You can see up at the top left of the screen, there is that existing caretaker's house. That's going to be the caretaker's residence, and that is also going to be where that major trailhead is located. And you can see the connection point up to the new Greenway Trail, which is going to run across the entire northern portion of the property. We also have our clubhouse and our pool and a tot lot playground with a picnic shelter. And then just to note too that this will be a gated entrance into the site. And then there also is a second entrance to the northeast of the site near the Shepherd's Park subdivision that also is going to be gated. And that eastern entrance is going to be for emergency vehicle access only.
Could I ask a question before you continue?
Yes.
Because otherwise we'll just have to go back
Sure.
later. When you talked about having the trailhead with parking, is that just what looks like the 2 parking spaces that are adjacent to the caretaker portion?
Yes, that is correct. There are 2 parking spaces. The town code requires 2 public parking spaces to be in a major trailhead. We're providing those, and one of those is ADA accessible.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. And this is the southern portion of the site. Again, keeping that open space, green space idea. We have some extra amenities down in this area. We have I'm trying to read, sorry, the shelter with the grill pad. We have activity lawns, and we have these fishing overlooks around that beautiful lake. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to go that far. So I have some elevation drawings for y'all just to give you a flavor of what these buildings are going to look like. This is the floor plan for that clubhouse. It's going to be about 2,800 square feet. It's got a bunch of amenities in it. It's got a TV game room for kids and families to relax. It's got a pool table. We have the guest check-in, restroom facilities, and then there's going to be a little small convenience store where people can purchase snacks and supplies for their camping trip. And then at the back of the clubhouse is this beautiful open porch with a bunch of seating so folks can come out in the evenings and enjoy the view. And Kate already showed you these elevation drawings, so I'll just go through these quickly, but just to give you kind of, again, the flavor for what these buildings are going to look like. We're going with kind of that rustic lodge theme, fit the theme of the park. And those are the picnic shelters. And then I did want to go through with you all the public benefits to the town with this project because there are quite a few. We do have that conservation aspect that is really, really important. We are keeping this property rural in nature. This is currently zoned to be more suburban, but we want to take a step back and really preserve that natural beauty of the site. And so we're going to be preserving the 2 existing ponds for stormwater, property's hilly terrain, and just that natural beauty of the site. Again, I had mentioned earlier that limited impervious area, dropping that down to 23.65% post-development. And then we are also adding that Greenway Trail extension and construction of that major trailhead for the town. We also are providing a vacation destination that assists the town with its economic development goals, as right now the town does not have a hotel within its corporate limits. I did want to spend a little bit of time just explaining this Shepherd School Road expansion. As Kate mentioned, we are going to be building out half of that 4-lane divided highway along our frontage. That's just a breakdown on the screen for y'all of exactly what that looks like. And to note too, this slide gives you a better arrow showing you exactly where that trailhead is going to be. And then one of the most significant aspects of this project is the traffic reduction that comes with this rezoning. This is from our trip generation analysis prepared by our traffic engineer. We are proposing 85 campsites, and that will generate daily trips of 129 trips. AM peak hour total trips will be 18, and PM peak hour trips will be 23 maximum for the day. But that is when those 85 campsites are fully occupied. That is not going to happen except during June and July of the year. So the rest of the year, those daily trip counts are going to be much, much less than what is shown here. So this is a very conservative estimate on the traffic we're going to be generating. And just to give you all too a comparison of what our new trip proposal is going to look like versus what could go out there today as a single family development, we are significantly reducing traffic counts with this proposal. For example, if this was to build out as a single family residence, there would be 728 daily trips, so we're reducing that by 599 daily trips just with this proposal. We're reducing the AM peak hour trips by 36, and we're reducing the total PM peak hour by 48 trips. So again, a big traffic reduction with this rezoning compared to a single family build out. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. Kate went through this. This is our points that we've earned through our utility allocation policy. I'm happy to answer any questions on those later if you have them. This is the map showing where all of those different amenity features are going to be located on the site. And then I did want to run through with you all the modifications that we're requesting as part of this PD. With a planned development district, you are allowed to ask for modifications to UDO requirements in an effort to make things more environmentally conscious, for things that make more sense for the development. So I do want to point some of these out for you. We are required under the UDO for RV parks to have a continuous, what they call opaque screen, an opaque buffer around the perimeter of the site except at the entrances. What's a little interesting and unusual about the UDO, it says we have this opaque buffer requirement, but then it goes on in other UDO sections to tell us how we modify that or how we meet that outside of PDs. So we have met all of those requirements per the UDO on how to meet this opaque screening buffer requirement, but we did want to point it out to you just because your code has these ways to meet that opaque screening that are a little different. We just wanted to point that out so everybody understood what we were proposing. So we're doing the full type D buffer along the southern portion of the site, and then we're doing what we're calling modified type D buffers along the eastern portion of the site and along the portion on the west that is adjacent to that existing mobile home. What I mean by modified type D buffers is we are taking into account the existing trees that are there today in our tree counts. So when we're going through and we're counting how many trees we need to have, if there's a good healthy tree in place, we can count that as towards our tree requirement. Now we may be required, you know, once the town gets out there and looks at the health of those trees, to go in and plant where maybe certain trees are not healthy. But that's why we're calling them modified, just because we're taking existing tree canopy into account. And then along Shepherd School Road, the frontage towards the north of the site, and then along the Greenway Trail, we're doing what we're calling a type C buffer, which is what the town refers to as semi-opaque. The reason we're doing type C there, again, this is one of those things, the RV requirements require opaque screening, but then the town code in other sections says in these two areas, you would do a type C. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. But we're doing the type C along the street frontage because there are existing electrical utility lines. We can't do a type D because we would then be interfering with the electrical utilities. And then to the north of the site, we are doing type C up there as well because of the existing sewer line that runs through the property and also the riparian setbacks. So to respect those and not disturb those riparian setbacks. This is just a slide from the town UDO kind of giving you more of a visual of what these different types of buffers are supposed to look like. Type D is on the left, and then that semi-opaque type C is on the right. This is just from the landscape plan showing you kind of the same idea. And as I mentioned, that modified type D, we may go out there, and if the tree is unhealthy that's currently existing, we would be required to replace and plant something new instead. A true modification that we're asking for is on sanitary facilities on site. The town UDO requirements have what we are considering over and above what is needed for a campground like this. There is a national standard, which is in that middle column towards the right-hand side of the screen, the NFPA standards. Those are national campground standards. And we are meeting over and above those national standards. We're just not meeting the town UDO requirements. Again, we believe the national standard is what should be followed here, and we're providing those. And what we are providing are those separate, like, shower and toilet facilities in enclosed structures. Also, at the RV campsites, just so everyone knows, there will be sewage connections at those RV campsites. So if somebody does come in with an RV that has a sewer hookup capability, they'd be able to hook up their own private toilet to the sewer. One of the other modifications we're asking for, these next three all kind of involve the same idea and concept as to why we're asking for modifications. We've got sidewalks adjacent to the internal private drives. Currently under the UDO, it says that if you are building a public street, you should have a sidewalk immediately adjacent to that public street. We are not building private streets within the campground. We're building a private internal drive. And we have extensive walking paths that are asphalt throughout the site. So building sidewalks next to our internal drive would be duplicative. So we also don't want to add extra impervious space where it's not really needed. So that's why we're asking for that modification there. And then the town UDO also requires that if you are installing a public street within a development, you should do curb and gutter on that street for stormwater purposes. We're asking for a modification here, again, because we're not building public streets, we're building an internal private drive, and our stormwater is going to be handled by the large ponds that currently exist on site. They have more than sufficient capacity to handle all stormwater runoff from this site and from the new private internal drives that we're building. I'll show you in a minute the existing topography on the site. The site naturally slopes down into these ponds, and when you have a situation like that, you want to take advantage of that, and you want to utilize what we call sheet flow, the natural flow of water down into a pond. That slows the velocity of the water that's speeding towards the pond, which lessens erosion. And then also that pond is going to act like a retention pond, and it's going to sift through that water, and it's going to pull out all the yucky stuff, you know, all your nitrates and your phosphates, and it's going to filter that water as it seeps into the ground and makes its way to Beaver Dam Creek. So those ponds serve a really important purpose, and if we were to go in and we were going to install gutter, it would mess up that natural flow. But here's the topography map just to show you all. At the highest points, I think we're up at like 290 feet, 92 elevation, and as it drops down into the pond, it naturally drops down into about 280, 282. So again, just to show you, the natural slope of that land really is conducive to having stormwater go into those existing ponds. And then we also have, on our request for modifications, with respect to driveway connectivity, under the UDO currently, it says that if you have new public streets within a development, you should try to connect those to existing public streets to have cross connectivity between sites. Again, same thing I've said before, we're not proposing new public streets. This is an internal private drive. And given the nature of the campground, it's a resort area. It's where families are going to be at play. And children are going to be at play. We don't think having public streets running through here makes sense for a safety perspective. Also, we want to be able to maintain those buffers around the perimeter to protect the privacy and safety of not only the adjacent neighborhoods, but also our guests. If we're going to have public street traffic coming through here, I think we all know how certain delivery trucks drive and how construction vehicles drive and lawn equipment trucks drive. You know, we're just very concerned opening up this site to public traffic could cause a very serious safety situation. So we're asking to have our main entrance be off Shepherd School Road and that be gated. And then the second entrance off to the eastern portion of the site will be for emergency vehicle access only. We did talk to the fire department and they said that those two access points were sufficient for their needs. We had met with Commissioner Baxter back when we were doing the text amendment, and she had made some very valid requests of us, so we went and did our homework, and we've come back and we want to to show Commissioner Baxter in particular, what our internal policies are for making sure that we're not going to have unruly guests that are going to be causing problems with noise and disturbing the surrounding properties. So I've put in here, we are going to have quiet hours to make sure that, again, we're not causing any disturbances to adjoining property owners. I did list out to our check-in and check-out times. Just some other things that Roger and Ryan thought of, just to kind of give you a full picture of things that we'll be enforcing. Again, that maximum speed limit throughout the park is going to be 8.5 miles per hour. Again, to really make sure that this is a safe environment for kids and families that are going to be playing. And another one that Commissioner Baxter had mentioned, which was very, very, very good to bring up, and we did include that in here, was the motorized transportation. There's this concern possibly of having like dirt bikes running through the site just because it is very hilly. We are going to be prohibiting those to make sure that those are not going to be allowed, not only from a safety perspective, but also from a noise perspective. Same thing with ATVs. And with that, I am happy. I know I just gave you a ton of information, but our whole team is here. If you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Questions from the Board of Commissioners?
Is there a way that I could ask you to please consider possibly adding 2 additional parking spots to the trailhead? That would be amazing.
We talked about we can definitely do 1. Do you think we could squeeze? Do you want to come? This is Stephanie Smith, our planner.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Smith. I represent Environmental Design Group, and we're responsible for developing the engineered plans for the project. So yes, I think we could look at that. We just met the minimum requirement, which is the 1 to 50, which is the 2 parking spaces. But I think certainly if we feel like it would be well used, then we can work with the owners to figure out how we could add 2 additional spaces that would be immediately in front of the caretaker's house. But we just need to find that limit between public and private areas.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any further questions.
Commissioner Miles?
Other than your campsite, person going to be taking care of the campsite, staffing-wise, do you guys have a kind of guesstimate of how many potential jobs you can have for the community here?
Do you know, Roger and Ryan, how many employees you're probably going to have on a daily basis yet? I don't know if they've done the full project management. It's obviously will be more. 10 to 12 in the summer, most likely.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I changed my mind.
Commissioner Baxter?
Always. And this might not be for you. This might be for Kate, or it might be for you. I don't know. As far as the Parks and Rec impact fee and the transportation fee, how's that going to play out?
Yeah, so we just adopted with the new budget a new transportation fee, which is based off of the daily trips modified for, I believe it's pass-by traffic is the factor. And so we would be using that to calculate the new fee. And the way that we do fees is if they're doing any additional work, transportation-wise, that goes beyond the scope of what's required by the UDO and or a TIA, then there can be a reduction in that fee. But with this not lending itself to any additional road work, we would just be seeing that fees as is. And I don't know what that calculation is off the top of my head. I'd have to take their traffic numbers and calculate that. And then as far as the Parks and Rec impact fee, I believe that only applies to residential. And because this isn't residential, that would not apply.
And are you going to be doing the build out of the road improvements or doing a fee in lieu?
We're doing the build out except for the median. The median is the part that's going to be fee in lieu. With this caveat, as we get into the design process, the town may recommend other portions of the roadway be done by fee in lieu, but that is, we've left that totally with the discretion of the town. So our commitment to you is If the town tells us build everything except the median, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it's typical, that's typical for all of our projects with a median right now, is that we take in the money for building that median in the future, because right now we just don't know how access and road networks are going to look in 5 to 10 years, so, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Commissioner Miles?
You may have explained it to connect to Shepherd's Park. What is the hesitancy of kind of connecting to that road? Your true kind of like hesitancy connecting to the road connected to Shepherd Park?
The one to the south? Or
Correct.
the one to the east?
The one to the south,
Let me
correct.
show you. Yeah. Well, oh no, I turned it off.
Let me see, sorry.
Sorry about that. I wanted to show you. It's so much easier with the visual. Thank you, Kate. Apologies.
Would this one work, or do you want the?
If we could do the green, yes,
Yeah, this one right
perfect.
here?
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to do,
Sorry, guys, give me 1 second.
that's my fault.
You're good.
Delay game.
What'd you say?
Delay game penalty.
Yeah. All right. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. I will make sure not to touch that button again.
You're good.
We get two. Okay, so I think, Commissioner Miles, you're talking about the road to the south here?
Correct.
Yeah, so our concern there is a few different reasons. One, you can see how close those houses already are to the property boundary.
Okay.
And we thought those neighbors would prefer to have a very dense buffer there instead of having a roadway running through that would then allow campground traffic to run right by their houses. So that was one of the major thought processes there of not opening that up. Another one is, as I mentioned, just this fear of the internal driveway within the site is going to be limited to 8.5 miles per hour. If we were to open that up to full public traffic, members of the public aren't used to driving at that kind of slow speed. Our one thought was, delivery truck drivers unfortunately may speed through there, and children are going to be kind of running back and forth between amenities. We just didn't want to create an unsafe situation. So those things are at play. Another thing I did want to point out, the way that subdivision was laid out, doing a cross connection through there means that roadway is supposed to run all the way north, possibly to that Tippett Road extension in the future, but that's going to run that road right through the riparian setbacks and the riparian buffer areas. So that didn't make, this development is supposed to be environmentally conscious and preserving those areas, and that seemed to be in conflict with what we were proposing.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Any questions at this time?
Planning Board?
None at this time.
I have a couple of questions. So first being the yurt campsite. So if you could, I'm not exactly versed on campsites and how that works, but if you could tell me a little bit more about their sanitary, because the yurts are right there at the neighborhood, and I know that one of the concerns, and I know this is a really nice development, but I do know that one of the concerns was any type of like sewage coming into that neighborhood.
Sure. So with the yurts, they are not going to have internal sanitation facilities, but there is a shower house right across the street. Let me see if I can find a good example for you. Okay, so if you can see the yurts, and then you see the shower house. Thank you. Okay.
Welcome.
She's helping me out here. Yeah, so they would be able to go and utilize that shower house for restroom facilities. So there's not going to be any sewer or septic tanks or anything like that for those yurt facilities. They will all be in that enclosed shower house, away from the single-family homes.
Okay, and then also light pollution. Like, is there going to be any, I don't see much going on, but as far as lights coming into that neighborhood, is there anything that you can say, hey, we got this going on, or we have this big lights to make sure that we can see everybody?
Yeah, no, again, this is supposed to be a very environmentally conscious development, so we've been very careful not to have lights along the perimeter. And Stephanie, you may be able to answer this better than I do. Are we having like full cutoff fixtures at the clubhouse? Everywhere, okay. So one thing that we do with lighting to make sure that there's not that spillover effect that would interfere with adjoining property owners is we have what we call full cutoff light fixtures so that the lights angle down and that the light spillover is limited, so it's not going to be going off into adjoining owners. And at the yurt site, is there only camp, like what's the internal illumination for those, or is there any?
So with the yurts, a lot of times campgrounds might have like a little solar light next to the yurt so that people can find it and walk up the steps safely. The other thing, just to respond to the restroom question with the yurts, there are no restrooms like Jennifer mentioned, but the national standard is to provide restrooms within 500 feet from a campsite that doesn't have internal plumbing. The KOA standard, by reference, is the 400 feet. We're within the 400-foot walking distance for all of our campsites without plumbing.
Okay. And then also, I want to go a little bit back. I know you said that this is not like a permanent campground or campsite, but I did hear you say something about 6 months. Did you say that no? Okay, you didn't say that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was like, I don't know if I heard you correctly with that.
30 days and 6 months.
30 days.
Yes, no more than 30 days within a 6-month period.
Gotcha.
Not 6 months.
Okay,
That would
within a
definitely make it a
6-month period.
residential
Okay.
site.
And I do want to mention with the lighting that 90-degree cutoff is a town standard as well. So this would be consistent with any other development in the town of Zebulon. Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowry?
Just a couple questions. So you had mentioned deviation from the sidewalk standards. The walking path, which I see here, that goes around the pond and everything, I'm assuming these are going to be to the development standards of what a sidewalk would be, correct? So we are talking width and everything for ADA compliance.
They're going to be, I'll let Stephanie answer that. They're going to be asphalt, so they're not going to be concrete, I believe, but I'll let her.
Yeah, they could also be a chip and seal or a limestone cover, whatever works best with the township requirements, but they would be fully ADA accessible. And I think the main route we designed is an 8-foot wide path. So that's really where the campground community should come together and just, I mean, that's where the life happens. But campgrounds, life happens in the streets. That's why it's 8.5 miles per hour for sure.
Right. No, I've stayed, so I understand.
Yeah.
And then the pond, was there going to be, I mean, you have fishing overlook. Are we talking about fishing? Are there any kind of water sports activities, paddle boarding or anything like that that would take place?
I know they're going to have kayaking. Do you want anything else? No swimming. Okay. Fishing. And they are going to stock the pond, they said, if anyone's a fisherman. And one other thing, just while we're on the pond, I forgot to mention this, but I think it's very important. Currently, right now, the pond in its existing condition is filled with exotics and invasives around the pond. So part of this development is cleaning out that entire area and doing a natural replacement of what's supposed to be there to really keep that pond healthy. So that's going to be another major improvement that's coming with this development.
So going back to, we're going to have some possible boating and kayaking and things like that. What kind of safety standards do we have in place to make sure that we don't have any incidents with youth or anything like that falling in these ponds and drowning and things like that? I don't want Zebulon to get in the national news because we had a kid drown in a pond.
No, totally understand. A very fair question. I know that the state of North Carolina has certain requirements as to boating. So whatever those are, we would be meeting those with respect to life jackets. I don't know if the national campground standards, they probably have something as well. So, I mean, Roger and Ryan are looking to meet the standards of, you know, that's what's been set precedent-wise before us. So yes, very well taken. Thank you. And they'll definitely be looking into that and making sure if there's any safety standards that need to be implemented with respect to boating and kayaking activities.
That's all the questions I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Piggybacking on that same question, will there be a stipulation against like gasoline-powered motors?
Did you? Are you?
I mean,
Ryan,
that's what they said here. Gas-powered scooters, dirt bikes, ATVs, and all that shall not.
But I don't think we've mentioned boats.
Well, I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know if that encompassed boats as well.
Gas-powered boats.
No gas powered
Paddle
boats, just
boats.
paddle Paddleboards, kayaks, canoes, yeah.
I have just a couple of questions also. I just want to understand the trailhead, excuse me. I understand the community is going to be gated, but the public will be able to access that trailhead and then walk.
That is correct,
On the
yes.
green.
That will not be within inside the gate. That will be outside the gate.
Gotcha, okay. And then my other concern is simply traffic from the standpoint not of the number of trips, but of the type of vehicles. So they're going to be large RVs and motorhomes and whatnot. How do you guys have any projections on how do you anticipate people getting to the property?
Yes, so we have our traffic engineer, Lisa
Right.
Lunding here, who is well more versed in this than I am. Lisa, if you want to come up, but our understanding is there's probably two routes that RVs can take. If the town prefers one route over another, we are happy to include that route in our check-in instructions for folks. But the two routes I understand, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, everybody's going to get off on 96, and they're either going to come down Proctor and turn left onto Shepherd School Road and then right into the campground, or they'll go Proctor to Pierce's to Tippett, then turn right onto Shepherd School Road and then left into the campground. Now, I will say, as we are going in for design review on our right-of-way improvements on Shepherd School Road, we are going to be having to go through NCDOT approval. They're going to make us study that full area to make sure what we're proposing is going to meet the traffic that we're going to be putting on site. So the design process is going to flesh out some of this with NCDOT.
So I know there's going to be a divided roadway there. Are people going to be able to make a left into the campground?
Yes, so I mean the placement of the median is going to be determined by the town at some future point in time, but yes, there will most likely be a break in that median to allow for a left turn.
Yeah, and that's something that DOT kind of helps determine as well is site access. And so if it's determined that this site should allow a full site access, then any future development of that median will accommodate that turn lane.
And again, going back kind of to my original question, getting, right there at the site is one component, but my other hesitation is just, we're going to have big vehicles getting off the highway and trying to add to all the burden that's already on 96 and Pierce's and Proctor and Shepherd School. It's getting from the highway to the site.
And just to point out, and I understand what you're saying, our AM peak hour and PM peak hour trips they're very low.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not.
It's not going to be inundation of RV vehicles coming through.
Yeah, I understand that. They're just going to be big vehicles, and I'm just fearful that the roadways are not going to accommodate that size. I live right there, so I would hate to try and drive an RV down any of those roads right now.
Sure.
And I understand they're going to be widened, but there's a lot of turns and so on and so forth. I guess to tag on to all those questions, I guess there's no way to have the access to the site be right directly from either Tippett or, in other words, is there any way to just have people drive straight across and into the site rather than having to turn and turn and turn again?
Well, I guess we're not sure yet. There's apparently, I found out from Lisa, there's an app that RV camp folks use that tells them the quickest, safest route to get their RV to a campground. I don't know what the results of that are. But like I said, if during this process, if the town commission feels that one route is safer than another, we are happy to put that in our check-in instructions. We can't force people to go that way, but we can definitely encourage them through the check-in instructions if that is something that the town wants to have happen.
That was all my questions.
Sorry, going back to what he's talking about with our bond issue that we have coming up and the roundabout that would be at Pierce's and Proctor, how would RVs navigate that roundabout? I don't know if we have that sized adequately for RVs and campers.
That's plenty right there.
Adam?
Chris Ray or myself would be able to answer that question, but any of those roundabouts would be designed to accommodate 18-wheelers and emergency service vehicles, which would absolutely be able to manage RVs.
All right, thank you.
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
No questions.
Mr. Adams?
I do have a question. And maybe you answered it. Will you guys have on-site security?
Yes, so our caretaker is going to be there 24 hours a day. They will be providing property management and then also security services. Yes.
I have one more question. I kind of want to go back to the buffer that was pointed out on the south. I think that's the south end where that goes into the next neighborhood over here. Yes. Could you tell me exactly which buffer that one is going to be?
That is going to be the one on the very south?
Okay, yes.
Yes, so that is going to be the full type D buffer. That's we are planting that thing full. We're not relying on existing trees.
Yeah, and then.
That's the most dense.
So you're
that
gonna make that the most dense in that whole entire strip?
Well, there's 3 sides that are going to be type D. One is
Okay.
just relying on existing trees. The one to the south, though, is going to be fully planted to meet the town standards.
Okay.
So this one along this, along the east side here, that's the modified. So that would incorporate existing tree cover.
Okay, and then what about that one down here?
This one down south
I
here.
don't believe there's
a little
enough
sad about that.
existing to meet that buffer, so I think that's
Yeah.
where we're going to be planting.
Okay, now I was just saying I'm a little sad about that because we're so used to looking over into that pond.
Oh.
So that pond will be gone for us.
You
on
can
that
still
side.
come on the Greenway Trail, or if you want to come for the weekend, yeah.
Okay,
it'll still
thank
be
you.
available.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the planning board? Commissioners?
No, my bad.
All right. Thank you. This time, we'll take public comment. Come to the podium on the left. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project?
Honorable Mayor York, Commissioners, Planning Board. My name is Scott Carpenter. I live at 214 East Horton Street in downtown Zebulon. Thank you all for your very thoughtful questions this evening on this matter. This is something I think would be just really nice, really cool to have in Zebulon. I mean, an RV park, like whoever thought of something like that. When I thought about, when Mary Beth and I thought about coming to town, we just knew growth was going to happen, things were going to happen in Zebulon. This seems like one of those kind of cool ideas that's come along. I can see people traveling through, stopping in our area, visiting our businesses, just part of that growth, part of learning that experience of what Zebulon's about. I'd like to thank the presenters for a lovely presentation. Thank you for your focus on conservation, and thank you for being respectful to the Tant family. Nice presentation. I'm for this idea.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak in favor of the project?
John, East 3rd Street, Wendell, North Carolina. I believe the owner mentioned that he was a civil engineer, and I am as well. As civil engineers, we have the responsibility to protect the safety, health, and welfare of the public, but we also have a responsibility to conserve and enhance the natural environment. And a project like this, when you see a piece of land this beautiful, and they're meeting both the human environment side and bringing the human environment and conserving and enhancing the natural environment, it's completely outstanding. I mean, I, as a civil engineer, love to see a property owner or an investor reach the highest and best use of their land without scorched earth. I commend them for hiring professionals that know this and bringing their best to the table. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak in favor of the project? Hearing none, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of the project? Hearing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak neither for or against the project?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, all of our planning board and town members. My name is Karina Schuler. I'm a resident in Zebulon. My address is 2010 Bunfield Drive, and I live right off Shepherd School Road, Old Bun Road. So I'm concerned about the impact of how is this going to affect us, one, tax-wise. Also, I'm concerned about the traffic, of course, obviously, because we're right there on Old Bun Road, where the traffic is coming from, I guess you could say, by the Zebulon Mudcat Stadium. So it's a constant influx through there. So when I'm trying to get out to go to work, it's already tough getting out. And we got schools in the area. I know it's going to be a time-limited project, but it's a concern, a traffic concern, and also grocery stores that's immediately in the area. We have the Food Line right here, immediate. So I just want to know how that's going to impact our area grocers, how it's going to impact our the traffic going through that Old Bun Road area, as well as the neighborhoods that are surrounding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak neither for or against the project?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ash, and my wife and I are here, and we live at 104 Ogden Pond Place in Shepherd's Park. And just as the owners were talking, the reason why they purchased the land by it being so beautiful, that was one of the reasons why we purchased our home, because we were looking out our bedroom, and that pond is just, it just captivates you. But one of our concerns that was not brought up during the meeting, during the presentation, I know that they're going to have the buffers there, but they also have this like a little makeshift fence there, right? Also, so will there be a replacement fence put in place to kind of provide more security for the inhabitants of the park and the neighborhood?
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak for or against the project? If there's no one else who wishes to speak, I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board for consideration. Thank you. Next, public hearing legislation TA 2024-05, legislation update, text amendment package. Staff?
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and Planning Board members. Before I begin today, I would like to briefly go over how I'll be running through my presentation. Now, today I'll be presenting a packet with 4 topics. And between each of my 4 topics, there will be an opportunity for me to answer questions from both the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners. Now, after my presentation is completed and I have addressed all questions, the Mayor will open the public hearing process. So with that said, let me begin. Tonight, I'll be presenting requested legislative updates in the town's Unified Development Ordinance. Now, the reason as to why this is being brought forth is because recently there have been changes within Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General State Statutes. Now, simply put, these updates that I'll be presenting today is for the town's Unified Development Ordinance to come into compliance with changes that have been made with North Carolina state law. Now, these are the review standards that the board must consider while going through my different topics in the packet presentation today. Now, as I said, the objective is these requested legislative updates to comply with changes and updates that have been made within Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General State Statutes. Now, the first topic that I'll be presenting on today is with regards to connection to public sewer and water. Now, the state of North Carolina provides municipalities authority, with limited exception, to require developed properties to connect to public sewer and water. Now, these changes would allow property owners to have the option to not connect to public sewer and water with certain criteria that must be met. Now, currently in our UDO, properties that are within 1,000 feet of an existing public water and sewer line are required to connect to these systems. However, this change would allow properties to not require connection to public sewer systems if the cost to install an on-site wastewater system, for example, a septic tank, is cheaper than connecting to the public sewer system. Properties are also would not be required to connect to the public water system if the owner's connection to the water system will not generate water pressure that is equal to the average of connected customers within a quarter-mile radius of the property owner's point of connection. Now, you may be wondering what some alternative options would be for those property owners who meet those requirements. And property owners can install septic tanks for sewer and water wells for water, and these are both permitted through Wake County. Okay. Now, the highlighted section that is highlighted in red is the language that will be provided under the lots that are within 1,000 feet of an existing public water and sewer system. And this section is the same language, but this is under the section of lots that are served by governmentally owned water or sewer lines. Okay, with that said, that concludes my presentation for the first topic, but now I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
So how is this going to realistically affect developments in the community? Because really, I can't imagine that any developer is going to want to put in 350 septic tanks and wells, right? Like, help me understand this a little bit better.
Yeah. So this is a new state regulation, and so basically the state allows this exception. And this exception is mostly for individual lots. So we're thinking about someone developing a single home or a small business where they are able to have the capacity of a well and a septic tank. And so this being a state update, we are adding it to our language to make sure that we are consistent with the state standard. But this doesn't mean that any developments that are outside of that range or don't meet these qualifications can't connect to water and sewer. They can still connect to water and sewer, they're just no longer required to by the state.
And so I guess my ask for clarification was more so there's not verbiage in here that specifically states like that it is a single family house. Or, so it could potentially be a development if that's the way they wanted to run it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Clark?
So there is a regulation that you have to have so much land in order to have a septic tank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would all be determined by Wake County. So yeah, that's another determining factor. But the state language allows for someone to pursue that exception and get that exception if applicable to their property.
Okay. Thank you.
Planning board?
No questions.
No questions at this time.
Nothing at this time, sir. No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Now we will take public comment. Anyone wishes to speak in favor?
Yeah, just a point of clarification on that. So with this being a text amendment package, we wanted to give the board and the planning board the opportunity to ask questions between each item, but it's being presented as a package, and so public hearing would be opened at the end the end of them. There's a slide for it. Sorry for not being clear on that earlier on.
Thank you. Next item.
Okay, so the second topic that I'll be presenting on today is with regards to the use type of sports wagering. Now, in March of 2024, the state of North Carolina legalized wagering on sports, but with significant restrictions on where and how that activity can occur. So currently in our UDO, there is no sports wagering use type. However, just to make it clear, this requested use would not allow casinos within the town of Zebulon. This law limits betting between two types of locations, the first being sports facilities and the second being places of public accommodation. Now, the new statutes define sports facilities to include NASCAR tracks, hosts of major golf tournaments such as Pinehurst, and home facilities of professional sports teams of the highest level of competition, for example, PNC Arena with the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the new statute defines places of public accommodation as venues where in-person wagering is offered within those said sports facilities. Now, a sports facility where this activity can occur is at PNC Arena in Raleigh. Now, sports wagering would not be allowed within Five County Stadium because the Carolina Mudcats are not a Major League Baseball team. So the requested update is to add sports wagering as an accessory use to primary uses. Now we used, as you see in the PowerPoint slide here, we used the zoning classifications of the primary uses of coliseums or arenas, and the second one being racetracks, because these were the only two sports facilities and places of public accommodation that are applicable to sports wagering, that would be potentially applicable to sports wagering within the town of Zebulon. Now, we as a town are trying to be proactive to add this use type using the state's rules and regulations. Now, as you see in the PowerPoint slide here, using the two primary uses of the zonings with racetracks and arenas, this accessory use for sports wagering will be permitted under heavy commercial, permitted under light industrial, permitted under industrial campus. It would be a special use permit under heavy industrial. It would be permitted under downtown periphery, and it would be allowed in planned development districts. Now, the use-specific standard would look exactly how it is highlighted here on your PowerPoint slide. This is simply just referring for future potential developers or applicants to look at the state standards, which is within section 18C 901 through 18C 928 of the North Carolina General State Statutes. Okay, that concludes my second topic, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the Board of Commissioners?
I just didn't see that you had 18C 901 in the packet, correct, or did I miss it?
I believe it was in the...
It was not included in the packet, but it is referenced in that, in the legislative update guide. But if you would like a copy of that, I'm happy to get you a copy of that in the next packet.
Yeah, that would be helpful, or if you could just send it out through email to us.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I just want a little bit more clarification on, because I did look at this outside of what was included in the packet, is just a little bit further clarification of how this would play out in our town. Because I mean, downtown periphery, the examples that you've given don't necessarily apply to us right now. According to my understanding, there wouldn't be a situation with how our town is currently built out to where we could have a wagering facility. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And kind of some clarification on why we're bringing this before you is with any use type that was once illegal, right, sports wagering, we now as a town have the responsibility to either institute that use or at least be aware of that use so that if someone does come in with a use that this accessory use would be applicable to, so someone comes in with a racetrack, someone comes in to develop a sporting facility and the state allows the use, we want to make sure that we're being consistent with our zoning regulations to allow that use in a way that makes sense for our town, right? And so when we're looking at the use-specific standards, that may mean making it permitted, making it a special use permit, whatever it may be for our town.
Were those guidelines spelt out in 18C as far as what uses would fall under which zoning categories? Or was that just something that the planning department kind of hashed through?
So the way that we determined that it's not laid out in the state standard, but what we took a look at was our arena standards and our racetrack standards, which are the two primary use types that this would possibly fall under, and looking at in what districts those are permitted in, and then having it permitted accordingly with those. So we literally just took those and copied them over from permitted, and then one of them, it's permitted but only with a special use. So we wanted to make that consistent as part of if someone were to come in, I believe it was with a racetrack in that zone under a special use permit, that this would also have to be part of that special use permit.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Commissioner Miles?
No questions.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions.
Planning Board?
I feel like I want to say this out loud to give everyone perspective, but I come from a state in New Jersey where they legalized sports betting, and the cities surrounding the places that legalized it sank faster than dropping a rock in a fountain of water. So I think we need to be very careful how we allow this to be used, and it's very specific on how it's allowed to be used, because it was a free-for-all when they when it began, and everyone was placing bets at this liquor store, at that bar, at this. They built a racetrack for kids so they can get around the rule, and then they were placing bets there, and it got so out of hand so quickly. So it's just I don't know, it's just an observation that I've been able to see in my life that I'm glad I can maybe apply here and bring to people's perspective. But don't have a question yet, but more of a statement to make.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. So the state defines sporting facilities very clearly, and has them. It's like there's very specific sporting events that can be bet on, which include things like professional sports at its highest level. So for instance, with Chris's example of the Mudcats would not be allowed to have a sports betting location because they are not operating at the highest level. They're not major league. So that's kind of one determining factor. And then another thing that's a little different about the North Carolina state standards is that, especially in a digital age, they are not allowing many on-site betting facilities. And so when you're talking about other locations such as bars, liquor stores, those would not be allowed to have these unless they were directly associated with the sporting event itself. And so the law actually states with the places of public accommodation, at least my understanding of it, is that it has to actually be on a site that the sporting facility itself owns. And so that limits it a little bit, but I do understand your concern, George. I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on some of the questions that you brought up with that comment.
No questions.
Nothing at this.
So you're saying we have a chance to get a NASCAR track?
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Next item.
And my third topic that I'll be presenting on today is with regards to triplex and quadplex standards. Now, The North Carolina zoning statutes already prevented local governments from regulating building design elements for 1 and 2 family dwellings. Recently, the update to Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General State Statutes expands the scope to include 3 family or triplex and 4 family or quadplex dwellings. With this change, local governments cannot impose restrictions on building design elements on residential structures with up to 4 units. Now, what's currently in the UDO, the UDO currently has residential design guidelines that are proposed as suggestions for ways to ensure that new single-family detached, single-family attached, and duplex housing is high quality, aesthetically pleasing, and provides a variety of living options for residents in the town of Zebulon. The design guidelines are recommendations for architectural designs for single-family detached, single-family attached, and duplex units. This differs from the design standard section because these are for commercial, mixed-use, and multi-family architectural design requirements. Now, what the changes are, triplex and quadplex units are currently governed under the multifamily design standards. This means that they are required to follow the town's architectural design standards. With this change, triplex and quadplex will now be moved to the residential design guidelines section, which is optional and serves as an incentive, and this would not be a requirement. Okay, now I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions from the Board of Commissioners? Commissioner Baxter?
So voluntary compliance is encouraged. And this is how the state standards have been written?
Yeah, so yes and no. The state changed a couple years ago, I don't know quite how long ago it was, but changed single-family residential so that local governments can no longer create architectural requirements for them, right? So we can't say you have to have hardy plank, right? That's not allowed. And so basically what the state is doing is now adding triplex and quadplex to that. And so the way that we kind of incentivize more quality development is having these design guidelines. And there's a couple of ways that developers can get points from these design guidelines, such as through our utility allocation policy. And also we have some density incentives. So if they are willing to meet the design guidelines, then they can have a more dense development. And so currently, as our UDO is written, duplexes, single-family detached and single-family attached fall under that. The state has now said that we can no longer regulate the architectural design the architectural appearance of quadplex and triplex, and so we are adding it to our design guidelines to incentivize those design standards or design guidelines on those developments as well.
Does this mean that we should revisit, I think that we need to anyway revisit the utility allocation policy, but with this coming in, I feel like we need to make sure that we capture the availability to give out the points the way we would like to encourage the type of build out that we are desiring.
Yeah, absolutely. And this update that we're doing tonight is just to make sure that we're compliant with the state standards. But if there's anything for anybody that comes up where you're looking at the UDO and you're like, or at our other standards, feel free to let us know and we're happy to take a look at that. So that's something that we can add to another meeting to discuss utility allocation policy.
Yeah, can we task you guys with reviewing the utility allocation policy, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Clark?
None at this time.
Board?
None at this time.
No questions at this time.
Just real quick, so I just want to be very, very clear here. So currently, we could tell them how to build out triplex and quadplex. Now we cannot, we suggest that they do it this way.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
that is
thank you.
correct. Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
be very clear. Okay.
I apologize, I was unclear
No,
about that. yeah.
that's all right.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Correct.
Next item.
Okay, my fourth and final topic that I'll be presenting in front of you guys today is with regards to the perpendicular parking standard in the UDO. Now, these changes in Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General State Statutes helps clarify that zoning ordinances may not require parking spaces larger than 9 feet wide and 20 feet long, with exception for handicapped, parallel, or diagonal parking. Now, what's currently in the UDO is the width of perpendicular parking spaces is 10 feet, which is larger than the 9 feet width requirement with this update in Chapter 160D. The depth of the perpendicular parking spaces is 19 feet, which is shorter than the 20 feet requirement with the update in Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General State Statutes. Now, this requested change is to decrease the width of perpendicular parking spaces from 10 feet to 9 feet and increase the width from 19 feet to 20 feet to comply with this new requirement. And before I continue, I would like to point out that town staff noticed some inconsistencies with the packet that was delivered to all of you. So I apologize in advance for that. But what's currently in my screen is what's correct. So in your packet, the 10 that's crossed off is 9 feet, which is what you guys received, but town staff forgot to change the 19 feet to 20 feet. So in advance, I do want to apologize about that. Now, I also, kind of going a little off topic, but I would like to mention that if you guys ever find anything incorrect within the Unified Development Ordinance, please let town staff know and we will be sure to address it. Okay. Now, on the right side here, you see that previously in where the red box highlighted, it was 9 feet. That was previously 10 feet, but we updated that to, as you see here, 9 feet, and we changed the 19 feet in the width to 20 feet under the perpendicular parking spaces. And once again, I'd like to briefly go over the review standards. These are the standards that both boards should be using in order to consider the updates that I presented today in front of you. Okay, that concludes my final topic, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the Board of Commissioners if you have any.
Any questions from the Board of Commissioners? Commissioner Baxter?
Nope.
Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Clark? Planning Board?
None, sir.
No questions.
So again, we can no longer require them to do 10-foot width. It has to be 9 as the minimum standard per the state.
That's correct for the state.
But we can still encourage them to do wider parking. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
We can still encourage them to do the wider 10-foot that we prefer for the town. Is that correct?
David, we don't have any incentives necessarily written into our text, but we can still give that as an option. They can still do 10, 11, whatever they want. It's just we can't require anything above 9.
Thank you. That's it.
Just from my own understanding. It seemed like we were in one case we were below what the state standard is going to be, in one case we were above.
Yes, that's correct.
If we're doing more than they require, do we have to still change it?
No, so this acts more as, and Kate, correct me if I'm incorrect with this, but this is more like as an incentive. So as long as we're not going above the 20-foot width requirement and below or above the 9 feet, then that's the most important standard that we must follow.
So So a little context, when we were looking at our text, we actually realized that it's been inconsistent for a while with our two figures. And so it was showing a 10 by 19 in that table that was presented first. And then it was showing a 10 by 20 in that picture, which is in the definition section. And so basically we sat down as staff and talked about, okay, which one would we want to see? And because the 9 by 20 is consistent with the state standard, that's kind of why we went with that one. But again, as the planning board and as the Board of Commissioners, you guys could choose to recommend a 19-foot or implement a 19-foot over that 20-foot. But that's kind of why we chose that 9 by 20, is just to be consistent with the state.
No other questions?
Ms. Jenkins?
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. So now we will take public comment from anyone that wishes to speak in favor of these items. Come forth. Hearing none. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none. Anyone who wishes to speak neither for or against? It's the opportunity to speak. Hearing none. If there's no one else who wishes to speak, I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board for consideration. Thank you.
That's all for
To adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
In favor?